Hello, history buffs, time travelers, and scholars. World War II was a period of rapid technological advancement in aviation, driven by the need for superior air power in a conflict that spanned continents. From nimble fighters to colossal bombers, the skies became a battleground where innovative engineering and daring pilots changed the course of history. These aircraft were not only marvels of their time but also symbols of bravery, resilience, and ingenuity. Inside the Bf-109. The Bf-109 was a legendary German fighter plane in World War II, often considered the most effective fighter of the era. In this article, we'll focus on the most popular model, the Gustav, or G6 variant, with over 12,000 built. When the G6 came into action in early 1943, it wasn't the top dog among fighters. However, it was a reliable design that could handle multiple tasks and saw action in every region where Germany was involved. The G6 measured 22 feet long, 8.5 feet tall, with a 32-foot wingspan. Weighing 6,000 pounds when empty and around 7,700 pounds fully loaded, its sections housed everything from the engine and guns in front to the radio equipment and tail wheel in the back. The cockpit's windshield and canopy were armored for protection, as were the areas behind the pilot and fuel tank. The tail section was attached with bolts, while the wings, designed for easy removal, had cooling radiators under each wing. The Bf-109 had its share of weak spots, like its cooling system, which was easily damaged and could cause the engine to seize. However, the plane's weapons, including a 20mm cannon and two 13mm machine guns, gave it firepower. It could also carry bombs or extra fuel tanks for longer missions. Equipped with a powerful DB605 engine, the Bf-109 could reach speeds up to 466 miles per hour and climb rapidly, though its range was limited. An external fuel tank extended this range, especially crucial for missions over the Western Front. At takeoff, canopy closed, tail wheel locked, flaps opened, and radiator set to automatic. Power was raised until the boost hit 1.4 ATA. The Bf-109 veered on takeoff, but at 62 miles per hour, the tail lifted, and at 105 miles per hour, the plane took off, followed by retracting the gear. The Bf-109, with 34,000 units built, became the deadliest fighter with 30,000 aerial kills. Many famous aces flew it, but as the war shifted, even top pilots were lost. Special thanks to Harri Huopainen and the Finnish Aviation Museum for their research support. The B-17 Flying Fortress. The B-17 Flying Fortress was essential to the Allies' bombing missions over Europe in World War II. Known for its daylight raids, its crews often faced heavy losses, but played a huge role in the war. Measuring nearly 75 feet long with a wingspan of 104 feet, about 3 feet shorter than a Boeing 737. Its thin but strong skin protected a sturdy frame underneath. The B-17F's structure included sections, each serving a unique purpose. At the front was the nose section for the bombardier and navigator, with up to 4 machine guns. Next was the cockpit with seats for the pilot and co-pilot, along with a dorsal turret operated by the engineer. Behind that was the bomb bay, then the radio room with a .50 caliber gun for defense. The waist section held 2 waist gunners on either side, while the tail section had a tail gunner with twin .50 caliber machine guns for rear defense. A crew of 10 ran the plane. The commander led, while the co-pilot assisted and could take over if needed. The engineer managed the engines and armaments, and the navigator guided the plane using maps and stars. The bombardier's job was to release bombs accurately and could also operate the nose guns. Other roles included a radio operator who could also fire a gun, and several gunners positioned around the plane to defend against enemy attacks. Armor plates were placed around the B-17 to protect the crew and key equipment from shrapnel and small-caliber bullets. However, pilots had to keep changing direction to dodge flak, anti-aircraft fire, from the ground. While this maneuvering helped reduce hits, it required precise coordination and formation to avoid mid-air collisions. The B-17F Flying Fortress was a powerful bomber known for its heavy bomb load and impressive defensive capabilities. It could carry up to 8 1,000-pound bombs, but the maximum load reduced its combat range, typically requiring a load of 4,000, 6,000 pounds for effective missions up to 1,400 miles. During bomb runs, the autopilot would take over, allowing the bombardier to use the Norden bomb site for precise targeting, though this left the B-17 vulnerable to enemy fire. The plane had .50 caliber machine guns in various positions, allowing it to defend from multiple angles, with formations multiplying defensive firepower. However, German pilots discovered safer ways to attack, such as from the nose where fewer guns were pointed. The plane was powered by 4 Wright Cyclone engines, each capable of 1,200 to 1,380 horsepower. It could cruise up to 200 miles per hour, with a maximum speed of 325 miles per hour for short bursts. Its fuel system included Tokyo tanks for long-range missions but posed explosion risks. Despite damage resilience, fuel tanks were self-sealing to prevent leaks from bullet hits. Navigation was complex, requiring expertise from the navigator to maintain course. The B-17F had a minimal hydraulic system and extensive electrical setup, running most systems via engine power. Safety measures like self-sealing fuel tanks, redundant systems, and crew formation tactics helped survival, but losses were still high during missions. By 1943, the Luftwaffe adjusted its tactics, but Allied fighter escorts reduced German effectiveness. By late 1944, the B-17's legacy included 12,731 units produced, with nearly half lost in combat. Only 3 B-17Fs exist today, with the Memphis Belle being the sole surviving combat veteran. Inside the F4U4 Corsair. The F4U4 Corsair was an amazing piece of engineering. It had a unique wing design and a powerful engine that allowed it to reach speeds over 440 miles per hour in level flight. Pilots appreciated its strong build and ability to survive tough conditions, which helped it become a legendary aircraft. Its engine made it both feared and respected. Later in this film, we'll show you what pilots had to do to take off successfully. The plane's body was made of aluminum, carefully shaped to reduce drag and make it strong but light. Aluminum sheets covered most of the frame, except for parts like the control surfaces, which were covered in fabric. The body of the Corsair was divided into 4 sections: the engine, the front, middle, and rear, and it was 33 feet 8 inches long. To protect against fire, a fireproof wall separated the engine from the front section. The plane's large propeller required a lot of space for takeoff and landing, so the design included extra long landing gear. However, the plane's unique wing design helped solve this problem. The Corsair had inverted gull wings, shaped like a W. The wings were angled down at the root and up at the outer edges, reducing drag and allowing for shorter landing gear. The wings could fold to save space on aircraft carriers. The plane's design was very strong and could handle maneuvers up to 11 G, though it made construction more complex and added weight. The Corsair's engine was a Pratt & Whitney R2800-18 WW2, a powerful radial engine. It could generate 2,450 horsepower in emergency situations, although this would quickly wear out the engine. The plane could fly at speeds up to 446 miles per hour, climb quickly at 4,360 feet per minute, and had a range of 1,156 miles without extra fuel tanks. The Corsair was armed with 6.50 caliber machine guns, plus rockets and bombs. It could carry up to 4,000 pounds of weapons, making it versatile for both air combat and ground support. Inside the cockpit, the Corsair had bulletproof glass and an armored seat for protection. The controls were well organized, with everything the pilot needed within easy reach. To start the engine, the pilot would follow a specific set of steps to ensure everything was working properly. Once ready, the pilot would carefully throttle the engine and monitor the airspeed, gently lifting off when it reached 81 miles per hour. After takeoff, the pilot would retract the landing gear and prepare for combat. Inside the Me-262 jet fighter, the Me-262 was a famous jet fighter used in World War II, designed by Germany. It was the first jet fighter to be mass-produced and used in combat. In this video, we'll talk about the Me-262A1A, also called Schwalbe, which means swallow in English. Since production of the Me-262 was spread out to avoid enemy bomb attacks, each plane might look slightly different in small details, like the layout of the instrument panel. But we'll focus on the most common features of the aircraft. The Me-262 was a twin-engine low-wing plane. It measured 34 feet, 9 inches, 10.6 meters in length, and the shape of its fuselage was a slightly stretched triangle with rounded edges. This design was chosen for its low cost, ease of assembly, and low drag. The fuselage was made of steel and aluminum, though some parts, like the fuel tank cover and control panel, were made from plywood. The airframe used longerons and stringers, connected by metal frames that could be assembled without skilled workers. The nose of the plane looked similar to other planes of its time and had a small window for the camera lens. Inside the plane, there were several bulkheads to separate parts like the ammunition, fuel tanks, and cockpit. The bulkhead between the gun ammunition and the fuel tank was reinforced to be fireproof. The skin of the aircraft was made of thin sheets of duralumin, a durable metal alloy, and was riveted to the frame. Some sections, like the part that housed the gun barrels, used thicker steel plating to resist gunfire. The wings were made of metal with a double spar design. The wingspan was 41 feet 4 inches, 12.6 meters, and they had a sweep angle of 17 degrees. Slotted wind slats along the leading edge of the wing helped improve performance during slow-speed flight. The trailing edge of the wings had flaps that allowed the plane to take off and land at lower speeds. The tail had a vertical stabilizer with a rudder to control yaw, and a horizontal stabilizer with 2 elevators to control pitch. The tail also had a swept-back design. The landing gear had a nose wheel and 2 main wheels under the wings, all with oil pneumatic shock suspension. The Me-262 was powered by 2 Jumo 004B1 jet engines, each providing 1,984 pounds of thrust. These engines were the first successful turbojet engines and were a precursor to modern jet engines. The engines had a complex process for compressing air, mixing it with fuel, and igniting it to produce thrust. The plane could fly at speeds of up to 540 miles per hour and dive even faster, though pilots were advised not to exceed 560 miles per hour. The Me-262's climb rate was an impressive 67 feet per second, 20 meters per second, though its dive speed was not as fast as some Allied fighters. The Me-262 had 2 main fuel tanks and additional auxiliary tanks, giving it a maximum range of about 650 miles, 1,050 kilometers. The plane could stay in the air for 60 to 90 minutes on a full tank. The Me-262 was armed with 4 Mk108 cannons, each with a 30mm caliber. These cannons had a high rate of fire and were capable of taking down enemy bombers or fighters with just a few hits. The plane also had racks under its wings for rockets, which could be fired in volleys or one by one. Inside the Oka manned missile, the Yokosuka MXY-7, also called the Oka, was a manned missile designed by Japan. It carried 1 pilot for a one-way mission. Oka means cherry blossom in Japanese, but the Allies called it the Baka bomb, meaning idiot bomb. There were different versions of the Oka, but this video focuses on the Model 11. The main body was tubular, about 19 feet 11 inches long and just under 2 feet wide, with an aluminum frame. Long beams supported the structure, and sheets of aluminum were used to cover the frame, giving the aircraft a light build, except for the heavy warhead. The warhead was covered with a single nosepiece and weighed 2,646 pounds, with 1,141 pounds of explosives. The whole aircraft weighed 4,718 pounds. The warhead had 5 fuses, 1 at the nose and 4 at the back. The nose fuse was activated by a spinner that spun once the Oka was released, while the pilot armed the other 4 fuses. The Oka was powered by 3 Type 4 Mark I Model 20 rocket engines. These solid rocket engines burned propellant to create high-pressure gases, which were pushed out to create thrust. The engines used a mixture of nitrocellulose, nitroglycerin, and other chemicals, producing 588 pounds of thrust. Inside the cockpit, the pilot could control the rockets, select the engines, and communicate with the bomber using Morse code. Instruments included a compass, altimeter, airspeed indicator, and a turn and slip indicator. The pilot used a joystick to control the aircraft's roll and pitch, and a bar for the rudder to control yaw. The Oka's rockets couldn't be turned off once lit, and it could reach speeds of up to 400 miles per hour in level flight or 580 miles per hour in a dive. The rockets burned for only 8 to 10 seconds, limiting the range. The Oka was carried by a Mitsubishi G4M2E Betty bomber and released at high altitudes. Once released, the pilot would activate the rockets, one by one, to maximize the range. The Oka's maximum range was 18 miles when released at 10,000 feet. Before launch, the pilot would prepare by removing restraints, checking systems, and arming the warhead. After confirming readiness, the Betty bomber released the Oka, which initially glided unpowered at 230 to 280 miles per hour. Once the pilot selected a rocket and ignited it, the Oka accelerated quickly. After using up the first 2 rockets, the final rocket would propel the Oka at its highest speed toward its target. Upon impact, the Oka's wooden and steel body would break apart, allowing the warhead to penetrate the enemy ship's hull and explode from within. Thanks for watching our exploration of World War II aircrafts. Make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more historical insights.